Welcome to the Career Connections podcast, where recruiting leader Stephanie Alston and operations leader Amie Thompson share real-world insights to help you navigate the job market, build confidence, and find the right career fit. Let's get into today's episode.
Hello, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Career Connections, where we talk about all things job market, job search, job hunting. And today we have a great topic that we're going to talk to you about, which is the future of work and how AI is impacting both the job market, but also those who might be looking for a job. And so I'm really excited about this topic. I think it's something that we all need to be aware of, how this technology is really going to impact the future of work. But let's get started with quick introductions. My name is Amie. I go by the Introverted Entrepreneur. I have a business where I focus on helping operations, so small businesses and startups, helping people with the back office part of their business. So strategic operations, making sure that your HR is set up correctly, making sure that your entire leadership team, your sales operations, marketing operations, et cetera, are ready for your business to scale. And Stephanie, please introduce yourself real quick.
And I am Stephanie Alston, and I'm the CEO of BGG Enterprises, and we are a full-service executive search firm that connects men and women of diverse backgrounds to companies who are seeking to hire diverse executive talent.
Perfect. So let's get started on this topic. And the first thing I want to ask you is just from a high level, how do you think that AI is impacting the job market, both positively and perhaps negatively, just big picture?
Yeah, big picture, I would say obviously the AI is impacting the job market in a positive way because it's allowing us to be more efficient, right? So some of the tasks that we don't enjoy doing, that is very repetitive, those things can now be outsourced by AI. So that works in both the favor of business owners, but also obviously those who are working in corporate America as well. On the flip side, one of the negatives of AI, obviously, is that whenever you have these mundane tasks that are now being outsourced to AI, there's now no need for entry-level employees.
Mhm.
And so I think we're in this place in this country right now where we have to figure out a balance to ensure that we're not wiping away entry-level jobs, but we're also doing what we can to maintain efficiency as well.
Yeah. And so something along those lines, though, do you think that it is most businesses that are adopting AI where that's going to be a problem with lack of entry level opportunities? Or do you think it's really just the bigger companies that are adopting AI?
Yeah, so I think what we're experiencing right now is something that we thought would happen maybe 20 years from now, and that's the mass adoption of AI. And I say mass adoption because if you go and you talk to the new business owner who just started their business yesterday, most of them are utilizing platforms like ChatGPT. They're utilizing Sora. They're utilizing Gemini. I mean, Amie, at this point, like our grandparents are on Facebook utilizing Sora and
Mhm.
Gemini, and so because you now have cross generations utilizing these platforms, I think we're seeing it at a much larger scale, both
Yeah.
at large companies and also small companies because it's accessible to all.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then that made me think there are so many tools that we use that we don't even know are also using AI.
Absolutely.
And so I'm thinking of
Yeah.
like Canva, right? You just think that, okay, I'm just going to make something cool looking, but there's AI generated images in there. You can do descriptions in there that are AI generated. So that's a really great point. Couple of
Yeah.
stats that I've seen recently is that by 2030, which is not that far away, there may be a displacement of up to 300 million jobs globally because of
Yeah.
AI. The other stat was that task automation, like you mentioned, AI could replace up to 25% of work because of
Yep.
that efficiency. And so that can be scary, right? So, what do you say to someone who's just graduating from college, just about to enter the workforce, does not have a lot of job experience? With stats like that, that could be pretty daunting or feel pretty daunting.
Yeah, it can. And just a little humor here, not serious, little humor. I was actually at the nail salon earlier today, and my nail tech, she's in Gen Z, and she said to me, "I'm thinking about quitting my job." And I was just like, well, why would you quit your job? And she was like, I'm a part of Gen Z. By next year, I'm going to be homeless anyway. And I'm just like, wow.
Poor thing.
And we both just laughed so hard because, like, I understood where she was coming
Yeah.
from, right? Like, it is a very dark outlook
Yeah.
for I mean, specifically Gen Z, right? Because they just graduated from
Yeah.
college, and so you are having to navigate not being able to find an entry level job.
Yeah.
In fact, a couple weeks ago, I did an event. At UNC Chapel Hill, and I was encouraging their students, like, hey, if you haven't had an internship by your senior year, you're in trouble. Like, I think now more than ever, and God forbid, I hope companies do not utilize AI to get rid of interns. I think internships still have value. But I will say that while internships are still available, I highly encourage college students now more than ever, every single year, every single semester, get an internship so you can be building up your portfolio.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, there's going to be no place for you to come to in corporate America. And it's specifically because entry level jobs are being erased. If you come out of college already with experience, it puts you in a better position to be
Right.
more competitive in the labor market. And so that's really what I'm encouraging college students right now to do, is to go ahead and start interning now. If you find yourself recently graduated and you can't find a job, look at volunteer opportunities, look at internships still. I mean, I know a lot of folks say, I don't want to intern, I've graduated. But sometimes you have to do what you have to do to build up your portfolio so that you're competitive in the labor market, because it's competitive out here. Like, the reality is that someone who graduated last year, they're probably also in the labor market competing with their parents because their parents haven't retired yet.
Mm-hmm.
And if their parents had, say hypothetically, if someone graduated with a business degree and their parents also graduated with a business degree, if their parent is laid off, that then becomes your competition in the labor market. And so I just try to get them to see things a little bit differently. I know it may feel bleak and like gloom and doom for them. And I think that eventually, like, the tides will turn in their favor. But for right now, the name of the game is getting as much experience as you can, even at an intern and volunteer level.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I do think there's, a responsibility for folks like us to go back and share that kind of wisdom with these college students or recent graduates, because there is so much focus on the job market of people who have experience that, you might lose sight of those folks that are just earlier in their career. I think the other thing to add to that is being AI curious. And so, yes, get the internships, but you're going to also have to learn how to use some of these AI tools. It's not really, from what I can tell, not going to be optional anymore. I think a lot of times technology, you could just say, well, I'm not technical. I'm not, that's not really my lane.
Right.
But now it seems like in some capacity, AI might touch almost every type of job. And so you have to start doing some. It doesn't mean you have to be an expert, but at least become familiar with the tools, become familiar with how you can use things. I personally was, a part of this job market. And on some of these applications, people are asking, what is your experience with AI? What tools do you currently use to make your work more efficient? Like, people are looking for that. So I would just add to your list, you've got to be AI curious in your own time and start to learn and train yourself.
No, I agree. And I would even say too, Amie, like, going back to something that you said earlier about, AI is something that has become a part of our everyday lives, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah.
Because I was talking to my brother a few days ago, and he actually mentioned, and I never thought about it. He was just like, think about, like, the ATM machines, that's AI. Whenever you go through automatic doors, that's AI. These are all things that, we've been using almost all of our lives and haven't really thought much about it.
Yeah.
But, like, the technology just continues to get better and better. And, even to the folks who say, well, I don't want to utilize AI because AI is going to take my job, right? And I get it. You don't want to train the model to then replace you.
Yeah.
I totally understand. But what I have tried to share with folks is that, to your point, it is important to be AI curious, because you also want to be able to combat misinformation, right? Because we see so many things now that is popping up on AI. I mean, for me personally, Amie, there are times where I'm looking online and I have to really pay close attention to details before I can even recognize that something's not even real, right? But if you totally disconnect from the world of artificial intelligence, you don't even have the knowledge to be able to see what's real and what's not.
Right.
And so if anything, I would say, even if you are anti-AI, continue to still be curious
Mhm.
because you want to make sure that you are equipping yourself with the tools to not be lied to not be misinformed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is what it is at this point.
Yeah. I think that's a good point too, because whether it's video, right, and how that can be
Yeah,
manipulated, or just simply the fact that if you go to Google now and you search for something, the first thing that comes up is an AI summary. That was not the case a
absolutely.
year ago, right? It was
Right.
somebody paying money to get, ranked at the top, or it was some kind of organic result. And now it's not, it's just an AI summary. And so, yeah, it's like I said, there's not really an option to
No.
opt out. Like, this is one of those
Right. Yeah.
things where you've gotta be, and it will be, unfortunately, each person's own fault if they decide not to, and you're going to
Yeah.
get passed
Absolutely.
by a little bit, um, not just your job, but in life. I took this,
Yeah.
class that, it was, University of North Florida was offering a free class, AI in work and life, and it was just
Mm.
reviewing some of the things that we do, just like you said, all of the things that we do. I mean, think about spell check.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Mm.
We've been using that forever, but you don't think about it, right? And so it's just like how much of our lives are consumed by AI and we're not even fully paying attention. It's just now the AI is more upfront and more for end users instead of behind the scenes. And so
Yeah.
it's like, can't be too afraid of it. We've been using these tools in some capacity
Right.
for many years. So, but I appreciate that. But let's move on to
Okay.
recruiting for a moment, right?
Okay.
So we talked a little bit about college students and what they might can do or what they can do to get a little bit more prepared to get more experience. What about folks who do have some work experience? How do you think, if they're in the job market, they're looking for something that's next, how do you think AI is impacting both recruiters as well as the job seeker? What kind of changes and shifts have you seen there?
Yeah, so the biggest shift, which we've been experiencing it for quite some time now, but I think that as more applicants are applying for jobs, we are now seeing even smaller companies roll out ATS systems
Mhm.
that only utilize AI to review your
Yeah.
resume. And I think on one end, it creates efficiency for the recruiter, right? So they're not having to comb through thousands of resumes. The AI technology is able to read the resume on your behalf, and then they're able to identify who's the best candidate for that job. I get it. There's efficiency there. You're saving money because you're not wasting as much time reading resumes yourself. But on the flip side, it's obviously hurting the job seeker, right? Because if you don't know what words to put into your resume that the AI checker is checking for, it puts you at a disadvantage, right? And so
Yeah.
then it limits access to those who may be very much eligible for the role, but they get overlooked by a robot who's never paid any attention to
Yep.
their experience. I think also with artificial intelligence, there's no nuances built in, right? So if the AI checker is reviewing employment gaps, they have no context on why there's an
Mhm.
employment gap. They also can't have compassion for you, right? Because who knows, maybe you didn't work for 2 years because you were taking care of a parent,
Mhm.
or perhaps you were taking care of a child, whatever the case may be. AI doesn't have that context that an everyday recruiter would.
Right.
And so, one thing I will say, even in that, is I think it becomes very important for you to build relationships. We've talked about this before
Yep.
with actual recruiters, with those in companies that you want to work at, because then you could apply for a job and give them that context versus hoping that AI is going to somehow push your resume to the hiring manager.
Yeah.
And then, even on the recruiter side, what I will say and encourage recruiters is don't just rely on the AI resources, right? Understand that there's a real person who's applied for that job. I understand that you're burned out. I understand that you're trying to save time and money. But at the end of the day, sometimes when you're seeking the very best of the best,
Mhm.
you're going to have a conversation with the best of the best. You're going to have to review the best of the best and not just leave it into the hands of AI to help you find the best employee.
Yeah. Those are all great, great points. A couple of things I want to touch on when you talked about the ATS systems and more companies using those systems, meaning that less humans are actually, or fewer humans are looking at your resume. And I'll just share my own personal story. I had, my resume, because it's been a really long time since I shared my resume out, it was
Right?
styled and formatted like I was going to email it to somebody
Oh,
instead
yeah.
of being ready for ATS. And so somebody gave me that feedback and I'm like, of course, but it did not occur to me. And then this weekend, I'm looking at someone else's resume for them, and it was the same thing. I was like, you can't worry about having all this nice stuff on there because it'll get rejected from an ATS system. And so
Yep.
there are certain cases where you could have great experience and be a good fit, but like you said, the recruiter or the HR person doesn't even see it because it won't pass that first screen. So it is very important as a job seeker to understand who is looking at your resume. And one other thing I wanted to say when you talked about advice for the HR people, I have a preference for those people who list the job description, but they also list their process and they're very upfront.
Mm,
Your first review of your resume is going to be by our AI tool. Like they say
that's true.
that right
Yeah.
up front. And then we're going to take the top whatever and we're going to have our team look through it so that there's probably not a good chance that you're going to make it just because
That's true.
you just
Yeah.
might not make it. So I appreciate the transparency because I
Yeah.
think we owe that to the job seekers so that they at least know what their chances are of even being seen. And so if you're even though theoretically or like we can know that everybody's using AI type of thing, when you
Right.
put that in writing in the job description, that to me that was a positive thing when I saw that. So
No, no, I agree. And you know what I often tell people, and you'll probably agree with this, is like the ugliest resumes are the ones who make it through
that's right.
ATS systems. And I mean, so like having your photo up there is not
That's
valuable.
right.
Having a whole bunch of lines and designs and the pretty colors, they're all great
Yeah,
if a human looks at
that's
them.
right.
But like you have to start to realize, like Amy said, is that a human is probably not reviewing your
Yep.
resume initially. And so when you lead with that, I think it helps take out a lot of the creativity in
Yeah.
resume creation right now.
Yep. So one other thing I remember, we talked about this a while back, but as far as let's say you do make it past the screening, right? And then
Yeah.
someone contacts you and wants to interview you, you had brought up to me, which I wasn't aware of a few months back, practicing your interview with the AI tool. So talk a little bit
Oh
about
yeah.
that because again, we're trying to think how does AI impact everything we're doing in the job market? And I thought this was a great example of that.
Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna try to experiment with this and hopefully you can catch a little bit of it, but I want to show you a little bit what that looks like in practice. I think it will be very helpful. So here's ChatGPT, and right here, well, there's a button like a sound, and so
Mhm.
I'm gonna speak to it and I want you to be able to hear, okay? So for today's example, we're gonna use that I am going to have because my background is in public relations, I'm gonna ask it to help me prepare for a PR interview with Microsoft. And let's see what it says. Hi, good morning. I am preparing to have a job interview with Microsoft. I am interviewing for a communications director role. Could you help me role play to help identify what questions the hiring manager may ask me for this interview?
Absolutely. Good morning. I'd be happy to help you do a little role play. Let's dive right in. So imagine I'm the hiring manager from Microsoft. I might start off with something like, can you walk me through your experience in leading communication strategies for large organizations? Feel free to answer, and we'll go from there.
Okay. So I'm going to end it there because I don't want to make this too long. But as you can see, it literally can walk through role play.
Yeah.
And the great thing about Chat GPT specifically is that I can give it an answer. And then at the end of this role play, I can say, hey, could you rate and then tell me how I can improve this interview?
Mhm.
And it'll literally give you all the things that you should say to prepare. I actually utilize this a lot before I do media interviews. And I even go down as far as saying, hey, this is horrible, but hey, can you talk to me in their voice as well
Yeah.
so that I can gain a better understanding of what it will feel like to be interviewed by them?
Yep.
Give me their tone, their personality. And it has worked wonders for me from a media training standpoint. So I highly encourage you guys to go through and do that live interview role playing with AI because it can give you some really good feedback and help you shake out some of those nerves.
I think that's great. And it just underscores what we were saying earlier. There are some things that can make AI seem overwhelming
Right.
and make it seem like it's going to be harder to succeed in this market. But there are also a lot of benefits. But you've got to be curious. You have to do a little digging, do research, and practicing your interviews is one way to do that. Because, like Stephanie said, you can get specific. Let's say you know exactly who is going to interview you, then give the
Right.
name in there tell your AI to go online, do some research on this person, and tell me what kind of questions you think they might ask. So I feel like there can be a lot of benefit to that, but you have to be proactive and you have to go out and actually do that. But thank you for sharing
Agree.
that. So along those lines, let's talk a little bit about. I have an example I want to share about AI interviews. So I actually had an interview with an AI tool. So I applied for a job, and then I scheduled an interview, and they were very clear. You're going to be interviewing with our AI. So tell me what your thoughts are about that as far as the process goes, and then I'll share my experience with that.
Yeah, so I forgot to actually tell you about this. I actually bid on a contract and I had an interview utilizing
Got
AI
it.
as well.
Okay.
And when I tell you, it was the strangest thing to have to like get dressed for not even a real person to interview me. It was insane. And at the end, they even asked me, did I have any questions?
Mhm.
And I did have questions, but it's just like, well, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, are you going to know the answer to my questions? But clearly, if it asks, it's going to know the answer,
Yeah.
right? And so I will say, for me personally, I don't like it.
Okay.
And the reason why I don't like it is, again, if I think about this from an efficiency and a time management and saving money, I get why it is valuable, right? But why I don't like it is, one, I don't think you're going to get the best forward candidate because it is AI, right? So it's hard to take it seriously because you're not engaging with the real person.
Mhm.
On the flip side, I also think that it takes out the opportunity for a recruiter to truly get to know you. Like, recruiting is a relationship based business.
Yeah.
And without relationship, it's really hard to me for it to be successful, because when we think about culture, right, everyone always talks about creating great company culture. You AI cannot create company culture for
Right.
you. You don't know who's a culture fit without having a conversation with these people. You don't know what questions to ask. AI doesn't know about employment gap. AI doesn't understand about transferable skills. So unless you know, in my opinion, certain buzzwords to be able to even utilize on those AI interviews, I think it's gonna still be really hard for you to be able to stand out. And
Mhm.
so I think we can give it some time to see how successful
Yeah.
AI interviewing is. But as for right now, I'm not a fan at
Yeah.
all. What about you? Like, what did you think about
So
it?
it was quite interesting. Like you, the part I agree with you on, it was very weird to like get dressed for an interview, but then there's
Yeah,
nobody there, but they're, whatever. So that was a little bit odd. But here's what I'll say, because I actually did, I tried to take some time afterwards and be like, okay, what am I thinking about this? The first few minutes were very strange because it's just this, robotic voice, right? But what I thought about from a positive standpoint is judgment, actually, right? So that human bias that everybody has. Nobody was actually looking at my outfit. Nobody was looking at the fact that I have locks. Nobody was looking at the fact that I'm black or that I'm dark skinned, whatever. All of that was
right.
gone because that robot was just simply asking questions about the job and what my experience is for that job. So I liked that part of it because I do think that maybe it was more objective than an interview with a real person. I was shocked. This one was pretty sophisticated. So it would ask me a question about the role. What experience do you have doing this? And then I would give the answer. And then it would say, well, since you said you have experience, let's take that example a step further and then ask me more questions about it. So I was like, wait a minute. It was pretty sophisticated. By the end of it was about 25 minutes. By the end of it, it actually felt to me like I wasn't talking to a robot. It felt like I was
That's
talking. I
scary.
know it's very scary, but it actually felt like I was talking to somebody who was just very objective instead of a
Wow.
person who you can't help but not be that objective. I mean, you're human, right? So you're going
Right.
to think about if somebody says, I've done blank, your mind is automatically going to go to, oh, I used to do that too, or so and so, it's
Yeah.
just, I don't know, more objective. So I'm still on the fence about it because, like you, I think there's a human component that can't be replaced right now,
Yeah.
um, to help make decisions. But for like a screen, I might be
Yeah.
okay with it. Like a very early on to save time and stuff like that, I might be okay with it. But I was pretty shocked at how comfortable I felt after a few minutes in just having this conversation with this robot.
It's like an episode of Black Mirror. It's crazy.
It was wild. But one other thing that I enjoyed is because we have to get over any fear. We have to get
Yeah.
over the confusion about where things are going. And there will be a time, probably in the next couple of years, where a lot of initial interviews are not done by people anymore, and they're done by these AI tools. And so it was interesting though. But we've got two differing opinions a little bit, but that's what you've got to do. You have to experiment with things and see how you feel about it and how you might incorporate it or not incorporate it. If I have a business where I'm interviewing, I wouldn't do, you know what I mean? I wouldn't do that because
Yeah.
like you, I think the people part of it is so much more important. But here we are.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Do you think that, because I actually feel like I would be more okay with it with the phone screen versus the video
Video.
screening,
Got
right?
it.
Yeah.
Got it.
So,
Um,
because I know that phone screenings, obviously you're screening more people, I'm assuming, most
yeah.
recruiters. Whereas the video, once you get to video, 9 times out of 10, there are less candidates there. That's
Yeah.
my thought process around
And
it.
I
Yeah.
don't actually know, to be honest with you, like it was a link, but I don't know that. I mean, it said to be on camera, or actually, I don't even remember if I was on camera, but I know I dressed because it's like, even if they say they're not on camera, they might still be looking at me. Like, so
Correct.
I
Yeah,
would,
you don't know, right?
but I think it was more of the voice is what they were paying attention to. So I don't know. I mean, it's interesting, and it was an interesting experience. I didn't get the job, but it was an interesting experience just to see, like, wow, people are actually doing, you know what I mean? People are doing this,
Yeah.
which was
I'm wondering at the end of I don't know, this would be something worth testing out. At the end of those AI interviews, if you didn't feel like you did well, right, could you say, hey, could you provide me with some of the feedback you're going to give the hiring manager? And the only reason why I say that, because again, so many people, AI operates because you've trained it, right? So if if you have not trained it not to answer certain questions, I'm now wondering, would it be considered out of bounds for you to even ask that question? You know what I mean? Like, would the chatbot know to
that's
stop?
interesting. I didn't think to do that, but I don't know. Like, what if because at the end, he was like, are there any other questions you have for me? And if I had said, yeah, I'd really like to know some feedback what would it have done? Like, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Something to think about, for next time. Because I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure this will not be the last,
That's
because we're
right.
going to continue to see. And I think, next time I go for a contract, I think I'm going to ask that question, because again, if I, as a hiring manager, if I have not set the parameters to say don't answer certain
Right.
questions, it doesn't know
That's
not to
right.
answer.
That's
Yeah,
right.
it just knows to be honest.
It's interesting. Very
Yeah.
interesting. So let me ask this question, shifting gears a little bit over
Okay.
to skills, right? And back to the broader market. What are some skills that you think, like we talked a little bit about the interview, what are some other skills you think can't really be replaced soon by AI, right? That where people's jobs might be a little bit safer, things like that.
I don't know, Amy. I don't know, because I honestly think that we're at a point where, I mean, AI. When we talk about like the creative space, right, which is technically what we work in. So you're thinking marketing,
Mhm.
communications, those areas. I mean, AI can create websites now. AI, actually, I was reading, is able to replace most entry level engineers.
Really?
Um,
Mm.
I mean, obviously, we know it can do like routine clerical and administration work. I mean, I think, I don't know. I don't know. Like,
Mm.
I'm really trying to think through like some of the areas that AI cannot replace yet. And I mean, customer service has even been replaced by AI in a lot
Yeah.
of ways. Like, I get those calls a lot. Or even you think about whenever you're calling, say, your bank, or you're trying to get in contact with like
Yeah.
someone that a bill you need to pay, right?
Yeah.
Even they have AI. And it takes forever to get to a human
Yeah.
person, because they have AI already trained to be able to answer even hypothetical
Yeah.
questions. And so I don't know. I
Mm.
mean, I think overall, when we talk about the bigger market as a whole, obviously skilled labor isn't going to be replaced right now. So think plumbing, think
Mechanics and things like that.
mechanics, yeah,
Mhm.
welders, those types of things.
Yeah.
And I'll even say this, because I had a conversation over the weekend with my mom about this, because I was trying to figure out, could you encourage, some of these corporate job seekers to go back and get some of these trade skills? And she said, well, maybe not. However, maybe there would be an opportunity for those to start creating businesses and hiring people who do have those skill sets.
Mm.
If you're looking, to get into like lucrative careers. I mean, it's also something that when I talk to high schoolers, I have a younger cousin who graduates from high school pretty soon. He's trying to figure out what to do. He knows he doesn't want to go to a traditional 4-year college,
Mhm.
and he's very hands-on. And so I said, have you thought about being a welder? And he was like, I have.
Mhm.
And we started doing some research. And some entry level welding jobs are even starting like $200,000, right? So when you think about that, I think depending on how old you are, I think there are pathways to more skilled labor.
Yeah.
When we're talking about AI not replacing you,
Yeah.
I mean, I do think that we have a little bit of time, and I say a little bit before we start seeing, AI replacing jobs at
Yeah.
scale. But I don't think that it's going to be another 20 years. I definitely think that we're looking at more of a like 5 to 10 year
Yeah.
period because things are really escalating fast.
I agree. And I think the other thing that we hadn't touched on too, as we wrap up a little bit, but is being an entrepreneur, right? Being a business owner. As
Yeah,
we talked about some of these current graduates or recent graduates, I should say, if they're having trouble in the market because of AI, you mentioned this early on, businesses can be a lot more productive without the number of people that it used to take. So you could be
right.
a solopreneur and you have systems that are helping you with workflows, helping you with your CRM, helping you with all of these different things. You can actually have tools that are reaching out to prospects for sales purposes, right? That are built on AI
Mhm.
tools. So it's like we also need to be helping them think, is there a business they would want to start? Or
Absolutely.
even from a freelancer perspective, because it is easier to do that now with AI tools. So that's something I thought about as you were talking.
Yeah, and AI actually, utilizing Chat GPT. I'm leaning more over the last couple of weeks on Google
Gemini.
Gemini more.
Mhm.
And only because obviously it's owned by Google, and so I found that their research is much more credible at times than Chat GPT. I have kind of figured out a hack with Chat GPT to allow it to cite its sources, so
Mhm.
then that way it can't hallucinate because they have to prove
Yeah.
to me that what they said is true.
Yeah.
But I will say that, for all intents and purposes, these platforms can help you build out business plans. So let's
Yep.
say if you just graduated from college and I don't know, you love basketball trading cards. How can I create a business out of that? Go to
Yeah.
ChatGPT and ask, is there a lucrative business here? Or in what area is there, the opportunity to make the most amount of money in
Yeah.
basketball trading cards? Like, quite literally, the sky is the limit. It does create
Yeah.
opportunities. Obviously, you still do need some level of execution and drive to be able to get it done, and some business acumen. But I think that this generation of graduates, or just this generation in general coming up, whether it's generational Z or generation Alpha, they do have access to information that we didn't have.
Mhm.
And so I
Mhm.
think that while many of us had issues with accessibility, I think that they're gaining access in ways that we never could have. They just have to learn how to take advantage of it.
Yeah. And I think that's good to close on. I think you're right in that they have access to so much more information, but they don't have the training,
Yeah,
right? And so that's the drawback because they haven't had a chance to get that work experience or just real world experience to
yeah,
match with that technology. We have the experience, and some of us are slower to adopt the technology
right,
because it's
yeah,
so overwhelming. So it's an interesting time. It's certainly a time to be curious and to do your research, but it can also be pretty overwhelming. And
yeah,
so I
for
hope
sure.
that if you're listening to this, you've at least gotten some tips, things to think about as we take a look at the future of work and how AI is impacting the job market. There are some things that could be pretty daunting, but there's also a lot of possibilities. So try to stay on the positive side. How
Yeah,
can AI and tools like ChatGPT or Gemini, or there's plenty of others, how can they help enhance what you're trying to do? And
right.
whether that's find a full-time job or start a business, try to think of it in a positive way because it's not going away. And
No,
so you have to adapt. So thank you all for joining us on this episode. We hope that you have taken some nuggets from it that you can use in your own life. We appreciate you sharing this time with us and listening. And we will see you on the next episode of Career Connections. Bye for now.
goodbye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Career Connections podcast with Stephanie and Amie. Connect with us on LinkedIn for more career tips, resources, and conversations that help you grow with confidence.